Hey, welcome to the Runaways podcast. My name is Cody, and today we're going to figure out why I'm so scared of this Rosetta meta that we have going on. It's kind of a weird meta. Hopefully, I'm just kind of overreacting to what's going on. But before we dig into that, Lucas back on the podcast with us. I see there's been some changes in that place that you stay in that room. You want to
Yeah,
talk about that a little bit? You were
I
bragging
do
about it
because
before.
I feel like I've gotten a bad rap for having an unclean room, but now it's all clean. I got new hardwood floors in the basement. It smells nice. The dog is happy. So stop making fun of me in the comments. I don't earn it anymore.
You've graduated. We'll see how long this lasts. I'm
We'll
sure,
see.
I'm
It'll
sure
be back.
I'm sure soon it'll go back to the way it was. And Dan, how have you been going this week? How's testing been?
It's been good. I have some room upgrades too. I have a bunch of bulk cards and empty boxes as I do with every set release. No, it's been good. Did a lot of testing online. Only in-person games have been draft, which I'm enjoying this format a lot. I think it's like really solid so far. Exploration's been good. Bunch of like valid or viable archetypes for each hero. Lots of ways to like navigate a draft that's going poorly. So it's been fun.
That's good. I see you have a bunch of Rosetta. I mean, I don't think I'm out of line to say like the EV on this set's kind of garbage, right? Like it feels
They
like
just
it anyway.
they increased the like variance a lot on like case and box purchases. Like you do still get some type of cold foil in every box, almost always. But with cases, it's like you could get actual nothing, or you could get like 6 marbles and 2 legendaries. It's pretty wild.
I don't know. Opening this compared to opening Mist is just like a whole different world. Because like when you hit a Marvel in Mist, you're like, ooh, half the box is paid for. Great. And then like when you hit one here, you're like, a $15 Marvel. Yay. Because like the Marvels are like garbage cards that most people are never going to play anyway. So I think that in my mind is where a lot of the sadness is coming from when you're opening the box. Because your Marvel slot is important. And then if your Marvel's just like a random sigil, you're just like, well, that was a waste.
Yeah, I think it's more of a gamble. Like the hits are better hits in this set, I'd say for sure. But
Yeah, there's also more good rainbow foil legendaries, which is a big deal. Like face purgatories are worth a lot more than sets have been in the past.
That's true.
But also, it's also
there's like
kinda
multiple
nice.
good majestics too. It's not just levels, which is nice.
There are
there's-
good Majestics. That's for sure.
Yeah,
It was mainly
but
the
you can't
Marvel
make your money
slot.
back from a box off of just Majestics.
Yeah.
And
I think it's
for the
fine.
most part Marvels as well.
If you're buying
Accessible.
sealed product, you're there to gamble and have fun. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not too concerned about EV.
True.
I've already made the mistake.
I mean, I would just like to open boxes because like obviously you're gonna take the gamble, but it's nice to get like nice, pretty stuff. It was better in Mist because every time you hit like a Marvel, you're just like, "Ooh, do I have this one yet? Nope. Okay, that's one less I have to get." And like you just put it off to the side. You hit a Marvel here, and you're like, "Nah, I don't want this." Oh, no one wants this. Ah, why are these the Marvels? I don't understand. Like I just think
Wait, I
Marvels are a big miss.
like the change to put the cold foil common equipment in the boxes.
Yes, that was sick.
Like being happy to see a cold foil equipment is like pretty nice.
Wait,
or
what?
weapon, I guess. They put the cold
Oh,
foil,
weapon,
the common
weapon.
weapons.
Yeah,
Sorry, I said that wrong.
Yes.
It's like,
Well, it's kind of weird. It's like a double-edged sword because like it's cool, but if it's an earth weapon, it's an earth weapon. So like if it's a lightning weapon,
I like
it's
having
awesome.
one for draft.
yeah,
but I'm
yeah.
with you.
That's all I was talking about. Is
Oh, sure, that's fair.
I like
Yeah.
to grab them all. Put them
Like
in
the
your
first one's
your little
fine.
draft pack that you're gonna
Yeah.
be playing in. You don't have to go win your armories to get them now to put in your draft pack.
Yeah.
I did open 2 Routwood Reapers, and that felt kind of bad.
I
First
opened the
one was
box
like, yeah,
with
this is great.
no cold foil. That felt even worse.
Ooh.
That hasn't happened in a long time.
No Marvel?
No Marvel, no cold foil.
Okay. I've had like my Marvel and my expansion slot cold
Did
foil.
you get a
take the
cold
place of my
foil,
cold foil.
Rosetta like title card? Because I heard that those take up the cold foil spot.
Nope. I got a full one, but it wasn't cold foil. It was just
Hmm.
normal.
That's pretty rare.
I
You're
think-
lucky.
Yeah. I don't know. I got a couple
Lucky.
more boxes coming. We'll see how it goes from there. Maybe my opinion will change after I open a couple more cases. Hopefully. Anyway, so if you will indulge me for a second, I will tell you a very quick story that leads into my trepidations or my worries about this Rosetta meta. That is not something that I've been worried about, previously. Yesterday, and a couple days before, I was playing Verdance. Verdance, in the way I was playing it, was like a very fun mid-range deck. I think this deck is actually incredibly fun. I was playing games, and I was laughing. I was enjoying the whole time. The deck was very fun to play because I was playing on multiple different axes. Sometimes I'm just like big dick damage attack that's like 8 damage, take something out of their hand or get rid of their arsenal, disrupt their turn, feels great. Sometimes I'm throwing a spell at them that's pumped up. Sometimes I'm just blocking out and healing. And then in the back of my head, the whole time I'm playing the game is like, what do I need to do to set up a combo? What do I need to not like a 40 damage combo, just like a 25 damage combo, 25 damage combo. What do I need to do? Oh, well, when I'm decomposing, let's make sure I keep one of my, my amp spell in the grave so I can pick it back up with my plume. Right. And so like that's like a constant game that I'm playing. And then I'm also like, ooh, should I take this turn off to set up a healing potion? How many of these do I need to set up to win this game? How is this game going? Or can I just win it through aggro? So the whole time I'm playing the game, not only am I playing like a fun mid-range back and forth game where I'm deciding if I'm healing or throwing a 3 for 7 or what I'm doing, I'm trying to balance the decompose stuff, but I'm also like setting up a big overarching macro play the entire game. I'm like, this is really engaging and really fun. And I played a bunch of these games. I was like, this is awesome. Like, not a lot of decks feel like this when you're playing it, where you're engaging in the moment, you're engaging in the future, and you're like engaging with your grave and your pitch stack all at the same time. And I'm like, that's sweet design.
And it's like all on multiple axes as well.
Yeah, it's all on multiple axes at the same time. And then you're like trying to time my chess piece with good 4 blocks and a bunch of other, little interactions. However, none of that matters. It's a fun, great mid-range deck, except for you just get blown up by hyper aggro, or you get blown up by the people who are all playing Count Your Blessings X stall decks. And so you're just like floating in this mid-range, and we won't even consider like Enigma for a minute, because that's like a whole nother beast that you're going to have to try and deal with playing a mid-range game, which maybe you can or can't win. But just looking at like hyper aggro or Count Your Blessings stack doesn't matter stall game, like there's no room in the metagame for the mid-range. I'm losing to Aurora. I'm playing against other like Florians who are just like, count your blessings, count your blessings, count your blessings. Oh, look, I'm turned on. I do stuff. I have way more health. You can't get through this. I'm playing good cards as well. Or I'm playing the mirror against a Verdance who's just doing the same thing, except they have infinitely more health than I do and stalling. It's like, clearly, why can't I play the game?
It sounds like clearly you haven't gone to Lucas's class of Verdance math. It's an Algebra 1 class. It's in the Runaways Discord. But I've also been playing a lot of Verdance, and I've had similar experiences. But it's really weird, like trying to focus on beating one of the 2 archetypes, because like you have to go so far off of like the deep end either way. Like you can absolutely beat stupid Count Your Blessings fatigue decks with Verdance.
Sure.
You just like you have to do some ridiculous stuff. I have definitely made some ridiculous claims in spaces, but like it's very weird building for both, because then Aurora is like, you might be able to be like able to have enough disruption to defeat her through mid-range consistently, and like you have ways that you can be better in that matchup, but like how do you do both? It's really, really hard.
And it's not isolated.
That's issue, right?
Yeah, that's the issue. It's not isolated just to Verdance. Like Florian has a really also fun like mid-range inevitability deck where you're like, I'm trying to not take too much damage while I disrupt you and set up my turn. But if we get to the late game, like I'm gonna win by inevitability. I can win just grasp alone. I'm just making 2 rune chants every round off grasp is like half the time can win, like just get you there. And like that's a cool way to have to play the game. And then he runs into Count Your Blessings or hyper aggro, and like he just can't win either of those games anyway, like trying to play that type of strategy. And this just goes down the list. You're like Viscerai, same issue. Vinset, same issue. Like all these like strong aggro to mid-range variants that are enjoyable to play, that are interactive with each other. You just start going into 2 different spectrums, because you can't beat someone else playing Count Your Blessings unless you're like hard teching for it and then making the guess that they are playing Count Your Blessings, so you put the no blocks into your deck. And even if they're not playing that, maybe they're just playing X stall, no Count Your Blessings, stack up a million rune chants, I'm going to blow you up in 1 turn. And like you can't beat that deck either. So like you're just running into both polar opposites of your deck trying to play mid-range, and you can't beat either of them if you're actually trying to play mid-range. So it just pulls you one of the 2 directions. And that's been like my issue all week.
Well, and it's also you kind of touched on this, but like every hero could just like be doing so many different things. Like there's auroras online that are just like playing 9 count your blessings and just like pitch stacking arclight flicker wisp.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, so when I sit down from Aurora, what am I supposed to do?
So
Like,
annoying, man. And like
it's
there's so many
ridiculous.
like counters to count your blessings specifically in these other cards,
It's
but it's like you
well,
can't
it's
just
like
sub them if they don't have it in their deck.
it's like so goofy because like it's so bad if you're in a tournament, right, and people like scout you, or like if it's just like a real deck going in, like everybody has hate for it. It's not good. Like it's good as a surprise thing, but like, oh,
It's annoying that it exists.
yes.
Not a
So
fan.
to set a little framework, how I currently view the meta, how it looks right now, and why I'm worried about Rosetta in general, because this is not something we've ever really seen before, is it looks like we have hyper aggro, and now I'm talking about Aurora, and one version of Aurora, which is hyper aggro, and I'm talking about Dash IO with the new cards because we're already testing.
I think that's
with
even more of a problem, but we can get there later.
So yeah, I agree. But those are the two like hyper aggro decks, right? And then you have a bunch of mid range decks. Like most of the decks in the game are mid range decks. They don't exist right now. And then you have X stall hype like combo count your blessing decks, and they're all kind of the same. Like you're either sitting down waiting, like building a bunch of rune chants up to OTK someone, you're like hard blocking and verdance comboing someone from 40 health, you're like Kano stacking to combo someone out, or you're just playing any of these other decks that all have count the blessings in there. All of these are kind of the same type of like function, and then you also can have Aurora in there, like hard combo Aurora as well to like flicker wisp and stuff. And then you have Enigma. Enigma's like sitting on the outside as well of all of these things. So if you're trying to play anything that aren't these decks, all of these decks are trying to interact with you in a way that has no interaction. Like the game has gone so polar opposites. Hyper aggro is not trying to interact with you. It is trying to play its entire hand out every turn with so much pressure that you can't play the game but could put cards in front of cards. That's all that it's trying to do. And if it's good enough, it'll be able to do that. Channel Valley, for instance, forces you to basically have to block. And then if you don't, then they just run over you with value. And then Dash IO does it with boom grenades, et cetera, et cetera. And then, or they're playing, I'm just going to heal and a million amount of health throughout the game and get 6 value per card when I do this. And I don't care what you're doing because I'm just going to out heal you, or I'm just going to stack up rune chance and kill you. And Enigma is on the other side doing the same thing. I don't care. I'm just going to put ward on the board, and you're not going to be able to touch me while I just have permanence on the board. It's like so polar from like an interactive meta.
It's kind of funny. Enigma feels like the most like real flesh and blood. Like
It's the most
somehow
fair deck out of all the things
the
I just
illusionist
listed.
feels like it's attacking and blocking the most
Yeah.
out of all of these decks, which is just like ridiculous.
And
like
I'm hoping
Enigma
I'm
feels
wrong,
the most-
by the way. This is how I currently feel. I feel like if you're playing a mid-range deck in this C at all, you're just losing. You're losing to Enigma, you're losing to the stall decks, and you're losing the hyper aggro. Like you can't beat any of them.
They really do have like all the tools though. Like if they can kind of like find the right things to focus on, I think mid range still has hope. Like the amount of tools these Earth decks have is like insane. Like just bottoming auras and the weapon suite. And
I actually think that mid range is going to end up being really good in this meta. I kind of view it differently. I think it's very early, and I mean we all know that aggro always looks good at the start of a format, right? It's typically the easiest to build. You don't really have to expect a metagame to build your aggro deck. And then these stupid fatigue decks, I don't care. I know some of them are trying to combo you, and some of them are trying to they're fatigue decks. I literally don't care. Because like a bunch of them are just like Pistol Dash or Bravo just fatiguing you. Whatever. They're blocking out and doing something. But like those decks are just like not very good at dealing with decks with a plan for them. And they're not very good at dealing with hyper aggro, right? Like you like that is obviously like we kind of haven't spoken about it yet, but obviously these decks are terrible into anything you can just attack. Like if you can use your 4-card hand on offense and you're trying to play count your blessings, it's kind of rough.
Maybe Dash is hard.
Maybe Dash is hard.
Like Dash they just can't cover Dash's output. But like Aura's output's capped. I think she doesn't scale like Dash
unless
does.
you're flickering, and then flicker combo can scale.
Yeah.
Well, also Well,
This is
I
true.
actually also I think that just blocking and playing count your blessings should usually lose to Aurora, but I think that's mostly just because you should get fatigued most of the time. But yeah, I don't know. I think as we see the meta evolve, we'll see more. Just because like a lot of it is like decks keeping other decks in check, but like maybe those decks don't actually keep things in check. Like it's like there's a lot of mid rangey decks I think that have potential. Like the brutes both should have the tools in theory to be able to be pretty good into the count the blessings decks, and then have game at least into the aggro decks. You have like, and that includes all the brutes as well, not just Loi and
It's
KO.
almost harder for a brute though. Like I don't understand why Count Your Blessings was printed, and it's all circular logic. So like Count Your Blessings is significantly above rate for anything we've ever seen in that space. If you hard cast all of them, you get 6 value per card at the end of casting all of them, which is phenomenal. And it's pure health. It doesn't require you to have blocked with it. It's just healing. So it's incredible value in anything that's trying to extend or stall out the game. But it can be countered. There are ways to work against it. Poison the Well, as much as people sometimes meme about it, is actually a really good counter to this deck. By holding a Poison the Well until they cast their 7th, 8th, or 9th, you know, spell, you literally can just win the game most of the time. Because they need that 7th, 8th, or 9th to hit for full value to really catapult them above you, where they just get like they're just so far out value, it doesn't matter. If you turn that into them taking 9, 10, 11, 12 health of damage, they just lose the game most of the time.
Like their whole payoff is like playing 2 or 3 big count your blessings, and you basically just negate 2 with 1 card.
Yeah.
That's a blue.
Yeah. So you have this as like a silver bullet, and since they have to cast it later in the game, you have ample time to find the Poison the Well to like set in your arsenal and wait to be able to cast it, right? So you can play against it. So if that is the case, then why print Count Your Blessings if it's so easily countered by a card that already exists? So now what you're asking the question is, if Count Your Blessings is very strong, we know this is the case. Count Your Blessings, unchecked Count Your Blessings is incredibly powerful. But so now you have to check it by playing Poison the Well. But if you're playing Poison the Well, then Count Your Blessings is no longer good. So what's the point of this? Like, it's just circular, dumb logic that doesn't need to exist in the game. Like, it's very frustrating because now when you go to a tournament, here's what you have to do. You have to pack your Poison the Wells into your deck. When you sit down across from someone, you have to stare at their soul in Swiss rounds and be like, is this a Count Your Blessings player? Let me put these no blocks into my deck so that I can actually win the game. Because if you guess wrong, you lose. And then the Count Your Blessings players are all going to a tournament like, I hope they don't put Poison the Well in their deck at all, or I can't win the game. And it's just like, just remove these things so we can just play the game and not play like a secret game outside of the game in the game. And then if you don't bring Poison the Well, you just lose to the Count Your Blessing. I just don't understand why this is printed. This is like terrible way to design a tournament.
I have the answer. First of all, I completely agree. The answer is they want Kano to hit Living Legend. So they want to absorb everyone's sideboard slots with either Count Your Blessings or Count Your Blessings counters. So we cut AB and Kano reaches Living Legend finally.
Yeah. I actually have a kind of, it's not like a super unique perspective, I guess, but I have a perspective on this because I played Yu-Gi-Oh for so long. There was a similar card in Yu-Gi-Oh. It's called Mystic Mine. I know Cody knows a little bit about Mystic Mine, but basically Mystic Mine's a card where if you know nothing else about the game, if you play Mystic Mine and your opponent does not have any way in their deck to remove spell or trap cards, the game is over. You just deterministically win. If they can't negate it, the game literally just ends. Like you deck them out. But if they have a card in their deck that can kill it, just any card in their deck that can kill it, which there's quite a few, then when you play the Mystic Mine, if you're trying and do that and deck them out and just win that way, you lose almost deterministically. And the cards that killed Mystic Mine were not very popular, right? In this case, that can be like Poison the Well. So it's very similar where if you play Mystic Mine or you play Count Your Blessings and your opponent doesn't have the counter, you win the game. And if they do have the counter, you lose the game. And that card got banned because it was awful. Because at every tournament, and I think the same will be true for Count Your Blessings, that card is just bad. If people are playing Poison the Well, if everybody's packing it, if everybody knows about it, if everybody has hate, it's just not very good. Right? Poison the Well isn't a perfect answer. There are some ways to counter it, but like if people have that and they know what they're doing and they have other sideboard slots for sort of fatiguey decks, like most decks are just going to kill you. they'll have some plan for it. They have some way to counter you. You're just going to die. But if nobody has that, then you just win the turn.
Yep.
Maybe it's not that bad with Count Your
It
Blessings.
can be pretty close, but yeah.
You have a very powerful strategy. And so I think the FAB developers' hope with printing it is either what I hope isn't true is that they just thought it was bad. I hope that's not the case. But my guess is that they're just like, this is bad because there's counterplay, so it's not going to be a problem. Which, when you have enough of that in the game, it kind of goes out of hand. Because like Dan was talking about, you kind of have to side hate for Kano, right? That's just something you have to do. If Kano and Verdance are both really good, maybe some other decks, you maybe have to play some amount of like extra wizard tech other than just AB, right? Maybe you have to play Spell Void, maybe you have to play Oasis Respites, or whatever. So if everybody's sideboard has to have Oasis Respites and Spell Void and AB and Count Your Blessings hate, then we kind of start to have a problem that I think Cody talked about on a pod like months ago, where like everybody's deck is kind of reduced a little bit, but in like actual size. It's one thing to have like sideboard slots for a lot of different decks, but it's another thing to have these really silver bullety style effects that in pretty much every game I've ever played have been sorely negative. I've actually been thinking a lot about this and talking a lot to my friends who have also played Yu-Gi-Oh! And there's a lot of comparisons that you can draw, which is really unfortunate because I kind of hate Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now. But silver bullets in games typically cause this problem where your sideboard becomes so impactful and so important that it adds this layer of variance into the game where if you're not able to sideboard all the silver bullets, you're going to lose X matchup when you don't have it. And then it just kind of becomes, it's like if you thought Gem Roulette was bad, imagine if you also were only allowed to play like sideboard cards for 3 decks. Like Gem Roulette just gets so much worse in that spot. So I really hope that Count Your Blessings just ends up being bad and that there's a lot of counterplay for it and nobody plays it. But I am a little bit worried with the amount of silver ability style cards that we see. Poison the Well also against Verdance, Oasis Respite against both wizards. There's a lot going on right now that's a little spooky in my opinion because silver bullets are just super dangerous and a super slippery slope, and I think pretty bad for games every time they've ever existed for the most part.
There's also some decks who just can't run Poison the Well, like KO, for instance. It's like really detrimental to run Poison the Well. Levia is like the same way, like because they're already maxing that out, that slot out. These become like really detrimental to some decks to have to run as well. And also in Swiss, you're just guessing because the Verdance you're playing against could just be mid-range Verdance. And while it would have some tactical value there either way, so it's probably worth playing still. Let's say Florian, because Count Your Blessings Florian is a deck that's been talked about, that's widely known. If you're sitting down against a Florian, you could be like, I guess I got to put these in just in case. Like, you're just like making that guess every time you sit down.
Yeah, I think it's like so unbelievably bad for tournament play. Like, I think you're now incentivized at like your pro quest, get there early and like walk around, and if anyone has their deck out, look for Count Your Blessings.
Yeah, you know, I hope it gets a drone style ban. I know it's very early to talk about bans.
No, I think,
and honestly, I think at the very least, give it a few more months. I don't think it'll be a problem for Worlds because I don't believe in Count Your Blessings enough for people to take it to Worlds, but it might be. And if it is remotely playable, and because the other thing is maybe all of these problems that we're talking about aren't as bad as we think, and Count Your Blessings is just fine and middling, and it's okay enough against the hate, and it's not broken enough without it. But early testing shows that it is probably...
It's just a joke is the issue. Like, why are we playing this game?
Like, it's just, it doesn't feel like FAB.
Well, no.
And that's something we've all kind of been worried about this, I think, with this format. That's what my initial impression of the format. It doesn't feel like FAB as much.
It's really frustrating because there's really, really fun mid-range decks with lots of back and forth grinding decision makings that exist in this meta. And they're really, really well designed, and they're unique, and they're well designed.
It's not hatchets versus KO. Like, it's
really I think these new hero design is like great, and they're not oppressive to play against, unlike Mistveil.
Yeah,
correct. I think it's
the issue is the stuff that's powerful is all the opposite spectrum. It's all as far away from interaction as possible. Like,
yeah,
can we go all the way away from interaction and to play the game, and that's the most powerful stuff. Now, I will say, most, if not all, Count Your Blessings decks just lose to Enigma. So I haven't seen ones that have put up a very good fight into Enigma.
What do you mean? We were just playing a game yesterday, and you were down like 48-38 against some Acelio dude. I don't know what you're talking about.
Not a problem. So, I haven't seen. So Enigma's kind of like hard checking, the Count Your Blessings decks, but it's possible that something is figured out with a Count Your Blessings deck that's good enough that like it can beat that still. But even if it's not, it's just like if you sit down, you basically like beat almost anything else in the game just by having Count Your Blessings in your deck.
I
That isn't
don't think
Enigma.
it's that bad.
It's very close. Like anyone trying to play mid range, they just lose. Like you just can't win the game.
I think it depends on the Count Your Blessings deck. Like I think that there's
obviously
like,
some that they're not all made equal. To be fair.
If you're playing like the wizards into the decks that are trying to fatigue people, like if you're playing like wizard into like stupid Florian deck, right? Like if you're playing wizard against the OTK Florian deck, I actually think you have a pretty reasonable path to victory against that. But it's like really hard to kind of know, and you have to be like so hyper specific. Like I made a tweet the other day, and I'll just spoil it. It's pretty easy to figure out. It was a Verdance deck that I was talking about that I was doing like 119 damage with some stupid pitch stack combo, right? And it's like that's the kind of stuff where it's like I'm not gonna give all the secrets, but like the cards that you're putting in this deck to do this combo are ridiculous. Like they're so bad. Like it's ridiculous. But like it works sometimes. It works enough of the time, and if you build a deck, you can probably create it to be consistent. But like that's like 15 sideboard slots or whatever. It's not realistic. You're playing a Kano deck, it's going to be similar. You're going to need some hate, and then you're going to stack them, and you're going to try and kill them. But like, it's just kind of boring. Like, you're not really playing FAB. You're playing Pitch Deck Simulator, which is fine, but like, it's not interesting pitch deck, right? It's not like Lexi against Bravo, where they were still throwing crippling crushes against you, and you were trying to stack through their fatigue. Like, you're just it's like Fatigue Oldhim, but he doesn't have Ice React or Earth React. He's just sitting there playing 8,000 Sigil of Solaces that gain him 9 health instead of 3. Like, it's just boring. Like, nobody wants to play the game with Count Your Blessings.
I'd love to know what the intent of this card was. Like, I hope it's just meant to be like a fun draft archetype, and they'll realize
it's so
how unfun this is and constructed.
Like, it's like not even good in draft.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not saying. So I'm not saying it is best deck. I'm not saying it's best deck in format to play Count Your Blessings, even with no counter. I think it's possible there could be a deck that is very close to that. But what I am saying is that for a lot of the decks in the game, you sit down and they show you Count the Blessings, you just can't win. Like the game's just over. Like at sit down, and that is incredibly frustrating. And it can happen with almost any deck. Like, and then on the opposite side, I think the hyper aggro is also worrying me. It's just giving draw. I'll talk about Aurora. Giving Aurora draw is very hard to play against when we don't have any additional defensive tools. Obviously outside Count Your Blessings, it's kind of a defensive tool. But what happens is when you're playing against Aurora, you're playing the game for like a decent amount of the game. You're like they throw 4, 4, 4, a million fours at you, and you go, sometimes they have Han hits for like pinging or whatever, and you're like, okay, I'll take some damage, and then I'll block 2 cards, and then I'll throw something at you, and then we'll do this back and forth, and they can't really block, so their health goes down, and your health goes down, and then all of a sudden they go Channel Valley, and you go, fuck, I guess I lose the game. Like you can't play the game. Because if you decide, fine, I will just block my 2 cards, you draw your extra card, move on. They get extra minimum of 4 damage out of that draw, which then trumps your 2-card hand every single time for the rest, like for the next 2 turns, because it lasts for the turn they play it and the next turn. They're guaranteed it twice, so they're up 8 damage on your push.
They're just replacing the card.
Sure,
like usually you're going +1 card total over 2 turns.
They get +1 card on the next turn, but they're still replacing the card, and the lightning has a value of having played a lightning card.
I think Channel Lightning Valley is just like Codex of Frailty, where it's like it's in a really strong aggro deck, and it's just like a ridiculous value tool. But I think it's like a little more narrow. Like it doesn't block. I
think you're both saying the same thing. Like,
if you're on the other end, do you block it or do you not block? What do you do?
It depends. It depends.
It doesn't.
I
It
think
almost never
I
depends
don't
because they
have
outvalue you if they draw.
you just
I
scour
don't
it,
have as
man. Just take it
I
off
don't
the
have as
field.
much. I actually don't really have a problem with Channel Lightning Valley. I like the design of that card. It's really powerful.
I like the card.
But-
I'm saying
the
as the
pressure
person on the
Cody's
other end,
describing is accurate though. Yeah, like that is how it works.
you can't play two card block, 2-card swing when they have that on the board. They just outvalue you.
To
But, like,
Lucas's
that's
point though,
just
it's the
kinda-
same
that's
thing as
just like
playing
a-
against like newer Azuri. Like the game's fine, you're going like even, and then they play Codex of Frailty into Leave No, and you're like, I guess I lose.
Yeah, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's just like a really strong card in a deck.
Yeah.
I think that's not the sort of thing I would complain about yet, is I guess how I would put it. Is like I think it's just a new powerful deck, and we have yet to discover the best ways to play into it.
But I get the feel bad of it, but I do think it's comparable to Codex.
Yeah, I think
I don't.
I'm just saying when every card is a 0 for 4, everything is plus value. Getting additional of those plus values is a big deal. Like you can't. What do you do? You just have to eat.
But it's also the only way the deck goes plus.
I agree.
Like,
it needs a tool like that, but the tool is also pretty oppressive. So it's like I don't know. There's like not a valve solution here.
I don't know. I think oppressive is just strong. Like
I think
just have no idea.
I think
I've played against like 30 games of Aurora in the last 2 days alone, and it's just like once that comes on the board, you have to be above them in health. Like if you're even with them in health when it hits the board, they will outvalue you on the cycles. You will go lower than it.
But you can also like present disruption that turn.
Yeah, well, it's also just like like the card is like negatively scaling. It's like Aurora's like one of her biggest strengths as an aggro deck is she doesn't have to scale, right? It's like Phi, where like you take a card from her, she gets 1 card worse. Whereas you take a card from like Zen, he gets a lot of cards worse.
Yeah,
like and she has like a card that scales, so you can like disrupt her, and then she scales worse because she only has like 3 or 4 cards or whatever. Mm-hmm. You have counterplay, and like it's a power card, whatever. So is like Mirror Guy. Like if you're up 10 health and you play a Mirror Guy, like yeah, cool. You also win. You also win that turn cycle. Like it's the same thing with Codex of Frailty. Like I don't have a problem with like a power card in a good deck with good math. Like
yeah, I think Cody's alluding to the consistent issue with aggro decks in this game, right? Like if they're too consistent, they just do the thing better because they can dump their cards.
Yeah, my point is there's a bunch of decks in the game who just like they just fold to it. Like I'm not saying that on the top end of gameplay that this is like a thing that shouldn't be printed. I am saying for a lot of decks in the game, they cannot handle the exchange when they just go 0 for 4, 0 for 4, 0 for 4, draw cards 0 for 4. Like it's too much value. And then when you take cards from their hand, they're just like, okay, 0 for 4, 0 for 4. Like it's they're still above value on the amount of cards you left in their hand. It's just like so
you gotta use those sideboard slots you have.
For what?
Play some Aura hate. Play the generic 3 for 7, man. Every deck can run that. It's actually quite good against the Aura.
The instant one?
When the channel's out. No, the 3 for 7 can't block with auras, destroying aura.
Oh, yeah, block with auras. If it hits, then it blows up an aura.
Everybody can play that. It's fine.
There's just like so much counterplay.
Just throw 3 of those in.
You just play like Condemned to Slaughter, kill their embodiment, like Summersfall, kill their embodiment, like kill their Channel Lightning Valley. Like
yeah.
I don't know.
You're talking about a bunch of decks that then lose on the opposite end of the spectrum against Enigma and Stall. That's the issue. You can't do both. So like you're getting like
I think we're complaining about the wrong card though, man. We got to talk about the dash item if you want to talk about
scaling. Yeah, we can go to dash next. My only point is
like we're complaining about drawing 1 extra card.
These are my 2.
Yeah, and you're going to have to turn to interact with it. And
dude, I don't even almost care about Aurora. Like whatever, she's fine. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, okay. Like you just haven't played enough games.
Yeah, we should play some games.
Like
I don't know.
Well, it's just like powerful deck. I mean, in terms of like balancing, like it's just so early. There's like a bunch of obvious counterplay.
I said,
and like she's gonna be really good, but
when they're not Flicker Wisp like Arc Lightning comboing you, the deck feels fair enough that I think it like I don't really have a big deal with it. I have a deal with it on the opposite end of the spectrum of the game because it's so hyper aggro and it's so oppressive on just being like, you can block me or you can trade with me, but I have better numbers. I just have 0 for 4s. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum is like hyper stall. You cannot attack both ends. And then Enigma sitting up here like, well, can you do enough damage to get through my ward? No, you can't. Like it's too many. This triangle is like too dangerous for like 90% of the decks in the game cannot play into this triangle.
Yeah. We just need ice.
No, get it. I think we're complaining too much in general. I think like This set's
I
kind of
agree.
sweet and it's been fun to explore. But
Yeah.
I think if anything might become an issue later for Aurora, I think it's the fact that they gave like defense reactions that are actually just like your best offensive tools too to aggro deck.
Somersault, you mean?
I mean somersault, yeah.
Yeah, Somersault's a monster. I love that card,
Like,
by the way. I think that design is great.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it's a problem right now, but like what gets me excited as an aggro player is that I can play a defense reaction. Like usually we test them, we're like defense reactions should be good in this deck, but it's always like no, because when you're not disrupted, you have to be able
Well,
to push.
you also just like playing Ardor decks though. So like D-Reacts are like infinitely worse than Ardor decks.
Dude, I don't like playing Artivore decks. I just have to play Artivore in my deck.
Dude, you love playing Ardor decks. Get out of here.
Well, anyway, I'm glad to not be playing them, and instead I get to play this nice defense reaction. That's actually just like the best card in the deck on offense too.
Yeah.
My issue is I want to play all the fun, great, new, interactive decision-making decks, and they just don't exist. Like, they're just not allowed to play the game right now.
Yet. I think they might be able to play the game in like
I'm hoping. I'm hoping I'm wrong, but
I don't know.
We know that we know a
this.
thing that happens.
What
People
about like
will
a nice
play
KO? KO is
people,
mid-rangey.
people will play whatever they want to play in this game. And so you'll just go to like a pro quest, you'll go to Worlds, you'll sit down, you'll be like, no one's playing Count Your Blessings anymore. Like, we've all proven that it sucks. And then you'll sit down round one and they'll be like, I'm Count Your Blessings deck. And you'll be like, why do you exist in the game? We all decided not to do this. But like, we are like, they're so sticky. People who find a deck that they like, they just stick with it. We don't have actual meta spread based on the best decks in the game. Like, people just like go there targeting the two best decks sometimes and win the whole tournament. And it's cool when that happens, or sometimes you just like never see those decks and lose in day one of Amsterdam, for example.
But Cody, you don't understand. There's so much counterplay to Count Your Blessings. Yeah. How can it possibly be bad for the game?
It's just it would be different. We're just not like, and this is one of the great things about the game is like you'll go to a tournament and like the meta spread will be like, yeah, this is the stuff we've isolated as good, and then there's just like a sea of random decks that show up because people want to play their deck. And that's great. That's one of the great things about the meta. But as you start introducing all of these weird variations to everything, it just becomes like just luck. Like you just have no real choice when you're bringing your deck to the tournament. You're just like sitting down and you're like, oh, I ran into like the Count Your Blessings guy who showed up and got rolled over. Or I sat across from Florian, but they were playing OTK and my deck can't beat that deck, but there's only like 5 of them here. And like every tournament, there's just 5 of these guys, 5 of these guys, 5 of these guys, 5 of these. Like last Worlds, like when Teklovossen was just like beating random people, they're like, why am I playing against Teklovossen at Worlds? Like, you know what I mean? Like what 4-0 day 1 then disappears. Like this is just a thing that happens in this game sometimes, right?
Well, and I can already hear the comments like, well, then you should have just played a deck that was good into Teklovossen. Yeah. Like you have to consider all the options, and then I would respond by saying,
I think it's a cool part of the game too. But yeah,
we have cool 80 cards in our deck. We can only do so much,
and I'm fine with all the heroes existing. What I'm not fine with is then oppressive generics that like Count Your Blessings that could just make any deck some random other deck that you like you haven't seen before. Like this doesn't make sense. If I have to play against Teklovossen as something, I don't actually get upset. I'm not sitting down. But now if I have to play against Count Your Blessing Teklovossen, if I sit down randomly, I'm just like, can we just like a couple of options is fine, but like it's ridiculous when you have powerful generics that can completely alter a deck.
Yeah, you see, like anybody can play Count Your Blessing.
That's like, the issue.
The more we talk through this, and the more like I've gone through like my own thought exercises on what I think the meta looks like. I don't know. KO looks like pretty nice to me. Like
KO looks terrible to me.
You're gonna get your value. You can like slant aggro if you need to without swapping too much. You can play cast bones if people are trying to stall.
Yeah, I also think the stall is a little
like
weird
in the middle. Like if you want to be able to compete against a wide spread, right? Like KO's good at that.
I actually think one of my least favorite things about Count Your Blessings actually is that it punishes it's like a fatigue deck that like really punishes any sort of setup. That's been like one of my biggest issues with it is like you can't just play like the normal like anti-fatigue game where you're like, I'm gonna carefully stack some end game and I'm gonna have some burst turns and I'm gonna damage stack. I'm gonna attack you every turn to make sure that I get a little bit and you don't send a big old disruptive attack back at me. But like against Count Your Blessings, you're like, I'm gonna take a turn off, I'm gonna hit you with like 3 go again into a CNC, and then I'm gonna like play some setup item.
Yeah, but like KO doesn't need to do that, right? Like you go back to playing your 12 go again attacks.
Kind of like you have to set up with cast bones sometimes though, and then
No,
and then
you don't play cast bones if you know they're on count your blessings. You just go.
Sure, but
You just go
I
at
don't know.
2-3 wide
I
every
think
turn. Either they're taking a chunk or they're taking a
maybe,
chunk. Like those are the options.
maybe.
I could be
You
wrong.
might
I
just
haven't tested it. It's just
Yeah, I think you probably just have to like fatigue the count your blessings deck, but I don't know, it's hard when they are playing count the blessings. So.
But that is me being I'm worried about the Rosetta meta. We haven't seen something like this, in my opinion, before exist. I am worried about how it impacts tournament play. I am worried about all the things you have to consider and play against. I also just don't think it's going to feel good for anyone going to ProQuest season, having to randomly guess what you're going to be playing against at all these things.
we felt it at World Premiere, right? Like you play your first game, it's like, wait, you heal 26 health this game? Like this isn't Flesh and Blood that I'm used to.
And limited, it's a little bit different, but
is it?
Yeah,
You're like both playing mid range decks in limited now. So if one mid range deck has count your blessings, they just win.
What count your blessings sucks in limited?
No, I'm saying if they have the equivalent, which is like heal 26.
Sure, like Proto
Grounds.
Yeah.
I think it depends a little bit because there's like you just like fatigue those decks a lot of the time. But.
You can. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we get close to go to Pro Tour. We go to Worlds.
Even if we are wrong though, like this card's stupid.
Yeah, I don't think it should have been printed. I don't understand why this exists in the game.
Yeah.
I just want to play the fun mid-range. I want to play Florian mid-range. I want to play Verdant's mid-range. I want to play these fun mid-range decks and have like real games against people and not have to worry about this like all of these stall decks and Enigma. Like it would be nice not to have to worry about these things.
Yeah.
But you can't. And Enigma might be counterable by some of these mid-range decks. To be fair, they do have tools.
Yeah.
These new decks are really cool though.
Yeah, they're really fun.
Playing all of them.
They're cool to play. It's just like they've invalidated their own work by printing a card called Count Your. Like I just don't invalidate all your hard work.
Dude, you guys were so close.
I don't want to attempt to question what the devs are thinking, but I would like to know.
This meta could be so good, and I still think it might be really, really good, but it might be really bad.
I'm very
like, why do we need this card? Like, who is this for?
It's very frustrating.
Can we just extract it? Like, it's a rare. Who cares?
Yeah, who is it for? I don't know.
Like, maybe it was just intended for Verdance as a combo thing, and then they didn't realize that every deck could just slam it. I don't know. Like, surely they didn't expect every deck to just be viable slamming this.
Yeah, I hope not. Yeah. Actually, you know what? That's not true. I hope that is the case so that they just ban it.
Because if they I hope they didn't know, and then
I hope they were completely ignorant. I hope they saw the first.
But there's no ban announcement until after Worlds now.
Yeah, but there wasn't a ban announcement before they banned the books, and then they banned the books. So.
There was. They just moved it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was
fair. They just moved it up again. You're right.
Yeah. And also, like, we don't technically have the Worlds format until like a few weeks before because there's some important LL points, and there's the DO Armory deck that's not like going to be legal in tournaments for a while. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're like 3 weeks before Worlds. Here's a ban, but
I hope they act faster than that. Like,
Dio's,
let's do it before ProQuest.
Oh man,
Dio's
one more item is so good.
Yeah, I don't understand that card, man. Like,
it's so.
We're talking about what Cerebellum something
processor. I think.
Processor
book on a stick.
I'm pretty sure this is just traverse all over again. Like, why is it just overtuned in every direction? Like, why does this have 2 counters?
Yeah,
so that cranking has like no cost. It doesn't matter if it's blue because you're always playing it. Like, it's effectively red, but also why is it blue? But then, like, why does it have crank if it has 2 counters? Like, one of these things has to go.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yep. Card is very good.
Yeah, it's very oppressive. It hits the board, and they're guaranteed like 30 damage minimum the next turn.
You also
and then they get to do it again because it enters with 2 counters.
You also have 3 spark, so you just like
you have sparks.
You just put it in your hand.
You have system reset. You can just like combo for like 80 now.
Yep,
it's no big deal.
Yep, and they have a silver bullet though. Warmongers. If they put it on the board, you can warmonger. Remember, it's fine. It's all fine. They have a silver bullet.
My personal favorite is to smash the good time, but warmongers is good
too. And also don't forget because that's not true because they didn't want oppressive offensive damage that invalidates the rest of the game and reduces a player's life total to 0 without any interaction.
I mean, they are not wrong in that this does require setup
because they said that.
No. This does
You
require
you
way more
you
setup
have
than that did.
you have to go through a reasonable quest of looking at the top of your deck and seeing if there's a
No,
Cerebellum
but
present on
it's
top of
just
it.
too easy, man. Like they get to look at the top card. They have access to like 2 banish effects on their equipment, like one per turn, and then one per game. And then their
Yeah.
whole deck is boost cards that also digs for more
Well,
cards.
you can also play the hat and dig
Yeah,
like
No,
sure.
they play the
Like,
boots and they dig more with those as
yeah.
well. It's like
In my
yeah.
just a
experience, it's like
mess.
you're guaranteed to find one in like the first 2 turns, and usually find 2 in the first 4. Like,
And then like
it's a lot.
and banishing one is fine because then they just play their 2 for 5. That's like if I hit, I get
Yeah.
this card back. Like,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh man, now I have to hold blocks and cards for this card indefinitely because I can't let you just get that for free.
It's just like High Octane is in Hand Simulator.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's so.
But you have Warmongers,
Like,
it's
why
fine.
why did we
You have a
need
silver bullet,
this?
you're fine. Just Warmongers. Just set a Warmongers, wait till they play their Cerebellum, then Warmongers, and they lose their counter, and
Dude,
it's fine.
They lose one counter.
Yeah.
It feels
They
like
lose
Zen
one
all over
counter.
again.
It's still there the next turn.
Dude, it
And
feels
then
like
they play
Zen all
system
over
reset,
again.
and now it's at 2 counters.
It feels like Zen where like they're like there's so much counterplay. What do you mean? Like we printed Mist and this round's on me
I
and
don't think this
weakest
was a
link.
counterplay thing. I think this was like a setup thing, which maybe they like underestimated.
Yeah, it is kind of weird because the other armory decks are like KO gets pretty good new chest.
The 1 for
Azalea
5
gets
was a big upgrade,
yeah.
but not
But,
near the power of I win the game because I found one of these.
yeah. I don't
That
know.
was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it needed it. Dash.io needed some help, to be fair. Now
I think
the question is, can they beat like a Stally out deck? Is still like a real question. I think that they have to defend. But I will just say,
because you're definitely going to beat Count Your
yeah,
Blessings.
but I will say that like it's scary. Like Dash.io is scary.
Yeah.
And again, it's hyper consistent. Like it's just like 1 for 4, 0 for 4, 2 for 5, 2 for like it's just doing like if you untap, you're never like, well, I hope their hand is bad. Like their bad hands can be bad, but most of the time they're still going to attack you with a 4, a 5, or a 4, or 4, or 4. Like they're pretty consistent on what they're doing. You can't just like sit around wait for an off turn in most cases. They have so many outs, so a bit tough. Anything else on this meta?
I'm excited. That's my. I'm like worried, and I'm tentative, and I don't want to say anything. But like, there are a lot of really cool decks, and I have played a lot of really good games, and I am excited for what the meta could be. And actually, I guess hyper specifically, I'm really excited for the highest level meta. Like ProQuest, I'm a little worried about. But if I'm going to like Worlds, I'm excited to see like what the actual best decks do against each other because I think that there's a lot of the problems I would have with the format are at like mid level where that's like like keeping certain decks out of the game or like making unfun play experiences for some heroes.
Okay, I don't know. I am excited to see what top level looks like. I think I'm just frustrated at like the missed opportunity. It feels like between Enigma, Count Your Blessing, X like certain stall OTK decks, that these really fun decks in the middle that are enjoyable to play. They're everything we love about the game. Like they're very thought provoking. The play style doesn't feel incredibly impressive. It feels like you're trying to make plays on both sides and pick spots and use all your outs and those all those decks are just kind of getting lost right now. I think in between the 3 polarized pillars of the current meta, and hopefully those pillars aren't real. That's what I have to hope for, and I'm hoping that's the case, right? But like Enigma is a problem. Like we didn't touch on Enigma. Dash.io is scary and a problem. Enigma is a problem. There's a whole bunch of decks that just like roll over to that deck.
Yeah, and maybe it's just not the time for these mid-range decks, but
They're so fun.
there's a lot that needs to go for them. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually also I think it's like if you eliminate one of the kind of variables, it's kind of okay. I don't actually mind Enigma that much if it's in a meta where it's like a normal Fab triangle, but there's a lot of counterplay. because like the mid-range decks have enough counterplay into Enigma and into the aggro decks that I think it's okay, and I think Enigma has like enough counterplay into aggro that it's fine. It's just I wish that there wasn't also these stupid counter blessings decks and these stupid decks.
You're just getting you can sometimes you can attack two sides of the meta. You're like, I have an Enigma match and I have an aggro match, and then
and a mid-range mirror match.
And we can play other mid ranges, and then Kano, you can kind of play the game as well, and then you're just like, oh no, a count your blessings deck, I'm so screwed. Oh, an OTK stack, I'm so screwed. And then you're just like, and then you go to the next card and you're like, you're also count the blessings? Wait, you're also why are there so many count your blessings? And you're like, I can't tackle all the things.
It's like, you're playing Zen. What are you doing? Like, stop counting blessings.
Count your blessings. Like news or count your blessings. I played Enigma count your blessings because I was like, everything is count your blessings now.
It transcends. The blue one transcends.
The blue one transcends. It's extra value. Garbage. God, I just don't understand.
Stupid card.
Okay, before we go into podcast questions, any other points on this topic? I'm scared of the meta.
I'll have to see how it plays out. Maybe it's fine.
Maybe it's fine. I'm hoping it's fine. I'm not writing off the meta right now. I'm not making a huge claim, but I am nervous. I am very nervous about this meta. And it's not so for completely different reasons than ever before. I say that as someone who actually likes playing Enigma. I can admit when Enigma is too powerful, sometimes she's too powerful. But Aurora does a good job of keeping her in check, I think. And Dash.io. They can both do a pretty good job there. Okay. Next, these are going to be podcast questions. These are asked by premium members of our Discord. If you'd like to be able to ask questions on the podcast, watch videos, interact with the team, find people to practice with for your upcoming ProQuest or maybe even Worlds, feel free to join in the link below. First question comes from Renzo. He asks, if you had to play LL tomorrow, what deck would you play? And what deck do you think is the best at the moment? I'm going to just let Lucas answer this because we're busy practicing for Worlds. He's still playing LL.
So if I could choose one hero in the game of Flesh and Blood to play in the Living Legend format, I would choose Bravo Star of the Show because I like playing Bravo Star of the Show. Verdance is probably the best deck, and if it's not Verdance, it's probably Kano. Acilio is also okay, and then there's some other powerful decks, like the Stubbies decks are still fine, Briar's fine, Lexi does a thing. I think that Kano is probably ultimately the best deck. He does a similar thing to Verdance. If you're unfamiliar why Verdance is so good in Living Legend format, it's because of Kraken's Aether Vein. All the stuff you do in CC, imagine if instead of just doing damage, you drew cards. And you could also just do it on your opponent's turn. So Verdance is really powerful. Kano gets to play Arcanite Skullcap, which is really good into Verdance. You get access to AB7 if you want it, as well as just still being Kano. And then into all these other decks. If you've played Kano in CC at all, you know that there's some really good cards in Rosetta. Overflow the Aether Wall, Open the Floodgates, the one that draws two. Those cards are really good, and you still get to play books. So I think all of the wizards are pretty good, and any one of them could end up being the best deck, and it wouldn't shock me. I also think Ice is still okay. Specifically Lexi, you have some counterplay to the wizards. But I really don't know yet. I think it's a little bit too early to tell for sure. But there's a lot of broken stuff in LL. Both of the new Lightning heroes do gross stuff. Briar maybe has some play. Like I mentioned, the Stubbies decks are there. I would play him because I love him, but also I think Starvo has some play into the new meta as well. Prism's still maybe reasonable, especially if wizards are everywhere. So I would say play the deck that you want to play, and the best deck is probably a wizard.
I would play Chain because I like that deck.
Chain is also pretty good.
I have no idea what's good anymore.
This set absolutely ruined LL. I
think it was completely, so good.
It was so good.
Yeah.
It was devastated the format. I bet Counter Blessing's good in LL too.
Yeah, you also, I didn't mention it, but RuneGate Chain is also just broken now. It takes a few turns to get going, but as soon as you're actually hitting your shackles, you have very easy ways to just like triple RuneGate out of nowhere every turn. Like once you hit like shackle 4, I think it's not unreasonable to triple RuneGate for the rest of the game.
It probably doesn't matter though, because you're going to get Krakened and lose the game anyway, because it'll draw
Yeah,
20 million cards.
Verdance is pretty goofy. I think Kraken's Aether
But you can run
Vein.
like Spell Void 8 if you need to, right? Does that do anything?
Kind of. I actually think the counterplay to Verdance is just that they're gonna hit Rampant Growth to 1, but
Or ban Kraken, like just
well, they
ban that
don't
card.
want to ban cards in LL, which they might still, but
No, they said they're willing to.
yeah, I think Rampant Growth to 1 it actually also probably does a lot. Because the deck is actually the deck's kind of weird. The deck really sucks when you're not exactly doing damage with Kraken's Aether Vein. Like your deck is, you look at your deck, it's like 6 Fruits of the Forest, really bad wizard spells. You have 0 armor block. You have no defense cards, and you can't do anything. If they have like a steadfast and you don't have amp like 17, your hands are worth like 4. Like it's pretty bad. So if there's enough counterplay, the deck is actually just non-functional. But Rampant Growth lets you do some pretty gross things sometimes when you're like, I'm going to amp 12, and then I'm going to draw 12 cards, and then I'm going to play another Rampant Growth, and then I'm going to amp like 30, and then I'm going to play an Aether Flare, and then I'm going to hit you for 70. It's turn 2, by the way. Like, it's pretty goofy. Oh, you Crippling Crush me? I have a response. I'm going to play a Sigil and a Rampant Growth, and then I'm going to Aether Vein you. I'm going to draw 8 cards. And then I'm gonna block your Crippling Crush, and then
That's so sad, man.
I'm gonna
LL
amp
was so
7
perfect.
more, and I'm gonna Aether Vein you again, and I'm gonna draw like 5 more cards. It's
It
pretty.
was such a good format. It's such a bright future.
It's something.
Okay. Madifs asks, with ProQuest EU season coming up, 415 CC events on the event locator offering 1,660 LL points, we potentially might see one or more heroes LLing. Adding to this the release of the Dash.io Armory deck the week before Worlds, how would you recommend actually prepping for Worlds for this meta?
If you look at the LL leaderboard, Dash IE is probably the only hero that's actually in danger of LLing.
Yep.
I don't think we have any like big callings or anything. Before then, we have a few battle hardens.
There's
But
a calling this weekend, I think.
There's
There's
one
Leon.
this weekend.
No,
Yep.
is it this weekend?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. There's Leon this weekend. So if like Kano or KO win, then maybe they have a chance of LLing, but I don't think either one of those decks is anywhere near enough of the meta share to actually be able to push through in ProQuest season. I think Dash IE is the only deck that I would expect not to be at Worlds. And then to actually answer the question, I think probably the best way to prepare is to just test with the DO Armory deck, right? Like that it's going to be legal. Test with it, and then I would probably assume that Dash IE is not going to be legal, but have some sort of plan for if it is. Like I wouldn't test Dash IE, but I would at least have some sort of idea for how you're going to play if she is legal and she's a problem for you.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I'm going into the first ProQuest weeks as if Dash.io had her cards and Dash.E was gone.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's how I would assume the meta to end up looking at Worlds.
On the ProQuest topic, though, like, why don't we know where Pro Tour Europe is? Like, how do we still not get event location and details before the qualifiers for the events?
Who knows?
I don't like that. I don't think that's acceptable, but hopefully that improves. We'll see.
Mike at Blockout Party asks, is Count Your Blessings currently overrated or underrated? And in the long run, do you see it being good for the game or bad for the game?
So we actually have
terrible
a
for the
video.
game.
We actually have a video that just dropped that you can watch where we kind of go over Count Your Blessings. It's
I think
Runaways podcast episode, whatever episode we're on.
Funny enough, I think Count Your Blessings is both overrated and underrated at the same time.
Agreed.
And it is only bad for the game. There's like no reason for this to exist. Please get this Yu-Gi-Oh junk out of the game. We just don't need to play weird combo centric decks like this. It's just not how the game is supposed to be played. It's like not how we play
Going
the
from the
game.
book ban to this is just like, I'm confused.
Who is this for? Like, instead of like oppressive offensive output, they're like, we're gonna make it defensive. You know how we said that we want games of Flesh and Blood to end by one player's life total being reduced to 0? No. My rune chant number is X.
Yeah.
My Verdance combo is X. You go from 40 to 0. You never hit 39. Never ever.
I don't know.
Yeah.
McNunny asks, how strong do you think a rune blade with earth and a lightning essence would be in the meta if it had no hero text?
It'd be so hard to build.
Yeah. It'd be very hard to build.
Yeah, my initial reaction to this question was you just play like a pretty similar list to Briar, but probably with a few more lightning upgrades. You probably just play like an Aurora style deck where you're just playing a bunch of 0-for-4s, but you have Channel Out Heroic.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
That was my initial reaction. I don't know if you can fit Lightning Valley in that deck as well, because your blue base is going to be kind of strained. Although it is worth noting that you can play probably more blues in a list like this if you're allowed to play Starfall, which obviously you are because that's how the rules work. But being able to play Starfall makes your blues count probably able to be a bit higher, especially if you're able to use both of those powerful cards well. But like the very base of just Channel Out Heroic plus a bunch of lightning attacks is pretty good.
Yep. And you have Rager now.
Yeah, also Blossoming Spellblade might be like really, really good in that deck. Because now that you actually have good lightning cards and good earth cards to fuse, it's
I think CMH with an additional 0-for-3 go again is like it's actually a really big deal than people think it is.
Wait, which one are you talking about?
Rager.
Rune Rager Swarm.
Oh, sure.
Although there's also
Fry.
The lightning cards. Yeah.
There's also Fry. Yeah.
Yeah. There's Fry. You can play like Flittering Charge. Just like Entwine Lightning is like actually just a 0-for-4 with go again now because you just like
it would just be like if I find CMH I win.
Dude, imagine you like somersault on your CMH turn. It's just like that's oh my god. That'd be pretty good.
Yeah. That could be pretty good.
You get to play Regrowth Shock as well.
Talents are strong.
Yeah. 2 of them are really good. Yeah, we're talking about like Earth being really good and Lightning maybe just the best deck.
Yeah. Dude, I appreciate them doing single talents so I can just like have a focus for my deck.
Yeah.
Or like be able to like explore one focus instead of just playing the most busted thing.
Yeah.
Agreed. Well, let's hope the meta is good and not terrible. And everything that I said was wrong in this podcast. I hope that in 3 weeks from now, going to Worlds, I'll be like, oh, I'm glad that everything I thought on that podcast was incorrect and the meta is actually fantastic and everyone is happy. So I'm just going to assume that's probably the case. So goodbye, everybody. Goodbye before I get upset about Count the Blessings again. So goodbye.
Yeah, we're getting rid of the envelope
7
here, but
envelope.
What we could do here is go ahead and play the envelope.
All 3 pitches of envelope and darkness.